Hello and welcome to Leadership from the Heart. My name is Renee Funk and my very special co-host. Hi, Elizabeth Riley.
Hi, Elizabeth Riley out of Austin, Texas. And oh my gosh, I am so excited. We are back and we are live and we are here. And I'm with you and our very, very special guest and friend, Jairek. Hi, Jairek.
Hi.
Hi, Jairek Robbins. You know, the list is a scroll. When Elizabeth and I invited you to join, I said, oh my gosh, how do we even begin to share with the audience who may not even know the long scroll of accomplishments you have? Best-selling author, performance coach, you're an inspiring leader and keynote speaker. Most recently, we're very proud to announce that you're the president of Success Enterprise, which we're going to dig into. And something else Elizabeth and I want to dig into is at the age of 23, you were awarded a congressional gold medal from the U.S. Congress. Jairek Robbins, that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, I've done a couple things.
And you're just getting started. Every time I hear you talk, you're like, we're just getting started. So it's
I'm only 37. I'm fresh. I'm still new. Like I'm new to the game. I thought when I was younger, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm 30, I'm old. And then I'm like, wow, I'm really new still. I mean, my dad told me when you turn, I think he said 35 or something, he's like, people will actually respect you more in the business setting. And I was like, thanks, Dad. And then it happened. I was like, wow, they kind of do. That's
Isn't it crazy when your parents are actually right? Especially yours.
Right.
Imagine, and we'll dig into that later too. But wow, well, we're so excited, and you know, Renee. Ever since I met Jairek, I've always talked about you and how inspiring you were, and how just impactful your words were in such a really short amount of time as you were introducing yourself as the new Success President. So we're excited to dig in and get to know you more and let our audience know who you are and what you're planning to do and as you take over the world.
I'm careful with the take over the world phrase right now. There's too many people trying to start that. Fair. I'm like, whoa, no, I'm trying to help the world.
Fair statement. Very fair. Well, okay, so let's get started because I know like there's so much we want to learn and know about you. But who is Jairek Robbins? Tell us about you.
Totally. I always try to share this in the most useful way for people listening. And I think I kind of use three major moments that can catch people and give them a little flavor of who I am so they get it. One, I grew up in Southern California. My grandmother lived in a time when I asked her, what was it like growing up? And she's like, well, her dad, which was my great grandpa, worked really hard as a tailor, went to go buy a rental property. He bought it on a certain part of town that group of people said, you're not allowed to buy property here. He was stubborn, which is part of my family. He went for it. He bought it and they burned it down the next day. And I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. Fast forward, she remembers there was one swimming pool in the town when she was a kid. She went to go to that swimming pool and they had a certain group of kids who could swim first. And then they emptied and bleached the pool before they let the next kids swim so they didn't get dirty. I was like, Grandma, wow, this is quite an experience. Like, interesting. How did that affect you? What happened? And she goes, oh, honey, I've learned two things. One, life is not fair. And two, you have to take the hand you're dealt and learn how to win. And I went, ooh. Grandma's got grandma wisdom in these statements. I love that. I took notes. I was like, okay, it ain't fair, but take the hand you're dealt and figure out how to win. I like those, worth writing down. And then I asked her, how did you do that? And she's like, well, I raised 5 kids. My mom was one of them. And then once the kids were fully raised, it was a time in history where she then went and got a job because that became kind of normal around, would it be 60s, 70s, 80s? 60s, 70s, I think. She went and got a job. She was a secretary. There was a normal job back in the day for a woman in Southern California. Fast forward, she got into sales. Then she became the top salesperson in every single sales position she took from that point forward. She has the key to the city of Los Angeles for salesperson of the year and business person of the year. She also was on the cover of Newsweek at one point and absolute total rock star. And I went, wow. I didn't see the story going there. When she told me the beginning, I'm like, that usually doesn't add up to that. How did you do it? And she said, I told you. I knew it wasn't fair, and I played the hand I was dealt, but I played to win. And I went, ooh, that's important. She played to win. She didn't play to play. She played to win. And she drove her business forward. To this day, she's still one of the top selling. She's 83, if I'm right. Grandma, don't hit me if I'm wrong. 83. And she's still one of the top selling agents in an insurance company. I tease people. I think she might have slowed down over the pandemic, but she was still cold calling at least 3 days a week. And so I tease salespeople when I talk to them. If you're not straight cold calling, like phone book numbers calling 3 days a week, my grandma is royally kicking your butt still.
Okay, Jairek, I think we need to have your grandma on Leadership from the Heart too.
Right?
Right now and here, we know the invitation is extended.
Yeah, she's a rock star, like amazing human. And I grew up with her. So a little bit about me. When I was really little, she bought me my first suit to go on sales presentations, and she allowed me to memorize bits of it. And she used to let me give some of it when I was really small, probably 5, 6 years old. And I used to lick envelopes and help her, send clients envelopes when I was little itty bitty guy. That was my job, that she would put me to work on the weekends kind of stuff. And so there's that piece of taking the hand you're dealt, knowing it ain't fair, but playing it to win. Number two, if I go, my mom was a huge, huge, huge human in my life of raising me and guiding me. And she was one of those people who didn't have much of anything financially, but she was always giving to everyone regardless of the circumstance. And I picked up some bad financial habits from her in the beginning, like, ooh, I paid $200 off my credit card, so that means I have $200 to use, which is not smart financial habits, but people land up in that position. My mom was one of them at that time in her life. And even with that, she would still see a homeless person and then use some of that $200 to go feed the homeless person. Instant, no second guessing, no thoughts, just show up and give. And I went, wow, that's cool. Give, even when you don't have it, is the fastest way to getting to abundance. And it's not always money. Sometimes it's just giving a lending ear to someone, or caring, or saying, I'm sorry, or how can I help? And so, playing the hand you're dealt, caring about others, regardless of the circumstance, just choosing to care in some way. And then I'll use my dad as the third. My dad is monumental in what he's done in his life. I met a friend who knew my parents when they were 17, about to have me. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to get the real story. Tell me about them. Tell me what they were really like at 17. And they were like, they were cool. He was super goofy and she was super nice, and they were cool. And I was like, well, what made him unique? What made him special? And she said, I remember a Thanksgiving when he got kicked out of the house by his mom, so he wasn't going to go home. We were going to have a Friendsgiving. Like, that's cool. And then he didn't show up. Your mom was there. Our other friends were there, but he didn't show. I was like, and where was he? Like, what did he do? And they said, I knew he didn't go home because he had fought with his mom. And he was showering. He was living in his car and showering at my apartment. So I knew he wasn't anywhere else. Like, that, this is where he gets ready in the morning. So where in the world could he be? Like, there was nowhere else for him to be. And all of a sudden, 6, 7, 8 o'clock, 8:30 or something, he shows up after kind of dinner's over, and they're all like, where were you? You just ditched us for Friendsgiving? It didn't make sense. And he goes, no, I was just doing a thing. And they're like, what? And he's like, just something I do, nothing. He wouldn't tell them. And they finally coaxed it out of him. And he said, well, I save money for people who are struggling so I can go help them on Thanksgiving. And they all looked at each other and they're like, dude, you live in your car. You're struggling. And he's like, no, not. I'm just a young guy. I'm fine. Like, families that are struggling, like people who really need the help. And they all looked at him. They're like, is he crazy? Like, him and my mom had that same heart. Now, the difference was he learned some financial habits, some business habits, and some stuff. And his transformation from kid in car, showering at friend's apartment to go to work in the morning with suit that doesn't fit, to 50 plus companies with I don't know, under all of them, there's 60 billion of management funds and 5 billion a year in revenue and all this jazz. And it's like, holy Moses, how did you go from a kid in the back of a car to that in this span of time? And it's only been 40 years, 30 years, 40 years.
Yeah.
That's not that long in history to make a leap like that. And so I look at him, and the thing that speaks to me is possibility. What's possible? I mean, he took something that seemingly was impossible for most humans, if we think about it, but he made it possible. And he certainly teaches people how to do those things. It's just he represents possibility for me. What is the range I think is possible? And the truth is, I could probably do more if I really want to.
Yeah. Well, sorry, I was just going to say, I've heard him tell that story. And it was so touching, but to hear it from your perspective, right? And that, I mean, your dad is, and we haven't even talked about that. I mean, your dad is a huge personality, and
he's tall.
Yeah.
Huge in all sense, right? I mean, he's a very large man. I mean, obviously we're talking about the great Tony Robbins, but it's, when I see him and then I've gotten to know you and we interact with you, you guys are very, very different, but very powerful in your own way. And to hear you tell that story from your perspective is pretty awesome, because it's just, look at what you were learning in that moment. Even though you weren't there and a part of it, the people that were molding you growing up young made such an impact.
Totally. I think who we are in the world, our actions speak so loud that the words don't really need to be heard. And so it's that thought of, as a leader from the heart, that concept, are your actions telling the story that you keep telling yourself and telling other people? So often I discover that the story people tell themselves about who they are and the behavior of who they are doesn't always match. And so I always ask people, if you want to get clear on something, just watch your behavior for 6 months and then write down, based on those behaviors, who is this person? If that's all you saw was how they behaved for the last 6 months, write down the description of who this person is. Write down the description on the other page of who you want to be, and then set them next to each other and see if they match.
That's powerful advice. And as you're sharing the stories of your mom and your dad and your grandma, one thought keeps coming to my mind, and that's those that are in abundant mindset, and there are some that are in scarcity mindset. You referenced your grandma was in a sales position. Of course, Elizabeth and I are both in real estate sales. And I think across all sales, you can see very clear definition between abundant mindset perspective and scarcity mindset. And I'm curious, Jairek, how do you work through that? And do you see a distinct difference? Or a couple questions. Can leaders jump from one mindset to the other?
Got it. So great question. I love this question. I use a concept I learned from a book called Your Second Mountain. And on the first mountain, it's what I can get from life. On your second mountain, it's what I can give to life. There's a little bit of a caveat here, though, because I'll show you how sometimes people want to just skip to the second mountain, but life will drag you back quickly if you don't fulfill the first mountain. So it's not about leaping over and just trying to stay there, because it will drag you back if you do that. You need to fulfill the first mountain prior to making the leap. And so the three major levels of the first mountain is, I am enough. This is a big one. I am enough, meaning as a human being, do you feel like you are enough? If you don't, then watch the behavior of someone who doesn't feel like they're enough. They become people pleasers. They get angry when people don't recognize them. They quickly feel not good enough. They're constantly doing and competing with everything around them to prove internally first that they're enough, and then externally that they're enough. And so if you watch their behaviors, the things that piss them off or hurt them the most are the things that make them question if they're enough. And instantly you get anger. Instantly you get rage. Instantly you get tears. Instantly you get the helplessness and the story of the victim and all this stuff, because it just challenged a very soft spot in their world, which is they don't think they're enough. And they haven't fulfilled the work that says, I'm enough as a human, just breathing being, human being, not human doing. And so human being, just being, they feel like they're enough. They wake up and they're there. That's fulfilled. Second piece is, so I am enough. Second piece is I have enough. This is a big one. I'll give you a side story on this, because when I grew up as a kid, I watched MTV music videos, and my hallucination, what enough was kind of Biggie Smalls and Puff Daddy. And that is not a good interpretation of enough as a 15-year-old boy.
Right.
That's helicopters and yachts and boats. And I'm like, man, if I could live like that, that's living, man. That's really doing it. Now where my family came from, like those weren't things. My dad was working to get those things and stuff, but that wasn't in the circle of 90% of my family. And so that just creates a very altered perception of what enough sounds like. Fast forward, I went and stacked lumber in Canada for 3 months, took a lap around the world, moved to Uganda to volunteer. I was living in a rural farming village for 3 months, teaching organic farming, no electricity, no lights, no toilets, like the basics of outdoor living, except for I was in a broken down schoolhouse. And while I was there, I was learning two things. One, how to fall in love with just being alive. No stuff, no things, no amenities, just living life every day. Just waking up, being somewhere and enjoying being somewhere. Most people, and I fell into this trap before this, are so concerned with their next vacation because they don't like where they are. And they're constantly running and rerunning from where they are. And the ability to find joy in this moment and feel like, wow, just here right now, I'm enough. I have enough. If I have air in my lungs, if I have, the ability to see. While I was there, I got malaria twice and was told I had 6 days left to live. And having enough changed drastically. It went from stuff and things and trips and shiny objects to, if I could just keep breathing, that would be great. That'd be wonderful. That would be enough. If I could just stay alive, that would be enough. Now, that's not a real high standard in life, but when you're faced with life or death, it's kind of the biggest goal. And so all of a sudden, my calibration of enough radically changed. If I could just have another day, that would be more than enough. If I could just see the people I love again, that would be more than enough. If I could just get home to hug my mom and dad, that would be more than enough. And all of a sudden, enough radically transformed in that moment. And so to answer the question, to have enough, what does that mean? What are the qualifiers in your life to say, I have enough? I am enough. I have enough. The third one is I'm loved enough. Relationships. And that's in two forms. Are you able to receive the love both from yourself and others? And are you able to give the amount of love that you desire to share with the ones you want to share it with? And so when you can get those full, all of a sudden you become ready. When a human being can go, listen, I am enough as a human just the way I am. I'm loved enough and I have enough. I want to help other people feel like this, is what happens. And that is the introduction to the second mountain.
Yes.
That's a lot. So while you're talking this through, I'm thinking it, and it's like, you're so spot on, because people are always chasing whatever it is. And sometimes they don't even know what they're chasing. Right. And I think what you just talked about is being, I am enough. Once you figure out I am enough, then I think the I have enough and I'm love enough all kind of comes into play. Right. You don't have to chase those things. You're no longer chasing, or you're chasing something different. You're chasing that peace instead of things, right?
What's funny is all the stuff I used to chase now chases me.
Yeah.
You become magnetic to it, which is ironically weird, because when you really, 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 really want something and you're like, I need to have it, I need to have it, I need to have it. Yeah. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. But the moment you get to a place where you're like, I don't really need it. I'd like it. I don't need it. I can live without it. Somehow it comes in abundance flying at you. And you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
okay. I remember, watch this. This will be important for people growing their business. When I was trying to go get clients, my gosh, it was hard.
Exhausting.
Like, come on, come here, come over. Let me show you. Let me do this. Let me do that. I mean, it's exhausting. And what was ironic was when I got to a place purely through giving, I switched the note in my head of, instead of what can I get from these people, what can I give to these people? And when I just said, the phrase went from, instead of trying to reach millions of people and transform millions of lives, I just said, hey, can I find one human today that I can get a message to at the exact moment they need it most, in the exact way that they need to hear it? I don't know what that is, but I'm going to keep sharing until a message finds the human who needs it most. The moment that switched in my head, my audience went from 5,000 people to 100 and something thousand people online. And I was like, what the weird shit just happened? Like, what? And I went from having clients in like 4 countries to having clients in 124 countries like that. And I was like, did I crack the secret code? Like, what did I just figure out? And I looked back and I went, when did this actually start happening? And it happened the moment it went from, how do I get more clients, to how do I just serve the one human who needs me right now? And when that little adjustment, all of a sudden, what I was doing went bloop, 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 bloop. I was like, uh-oh. And I think the way you described that earlier was the abundance mindset.
Yep.
So it's kind of like I tapped into that from scarcity of how do I get to abundance? How do I share?
Yep.
And all of a sudden it happened. And that was the exact phrase. How do I get all these people to, how do I just help the person who needs me right now?
I think when you are talking about I am enough and you figure that out, then you can be much more intentional, right? Because I think once you're looking for that validation, whether it's within yourself or from external, you're chasing every relationship, right? So at that point, it's just more about quantity. I need everybody around me as much as I can get from everybody. When you change your mindset, like you're talking about, you can be more intentional with those relationships. And now it's really about quantity. And that was a huge aha for me as I've grown in my personal life and my business. It's like, I don't need all these people around me, because what you do is you surround yourself with takers and you surround yourself with the same type of people. So you're not helping. It's just, you're just climbing on each other, trying to get ahead, right? But then when you recognize, oh, wait a minute, I can serve in a different way, and those that I am enough to are going to be attracted to me, just like you're saying, then it's all about the quantity, and everything else seems to fall into place. And it's not perfect, but it's a big aha, and it's a big eye opener, where before you're just kind of in that rat race, and now you can be much more intentional and much more impactful with those relationships. And to your point, even one person each day, I mean, that cascades out, and what impact is that going to make overall?
Totally. I'll two pieces here to make this make sense for people. One, how a friend made $10 million from this, and two, how it saved someone's life. And I think both are critically important. The first was, I remember when I started thinking that way and putting that intention out first thing in the morning, how do I get a message to the person who needs it most? I remember so many months later, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten from an airman who had been deployed. She came home, had horrible PTSD. And in the letter, it said, "Dear Mr. Robbins, I came home from war. I had horrible PTSD. Someone gave me a copy of your book. I read the first 2 chapters, and it reminded me of the reason why I want to keep living." I went, whoa, whoa. And what had happened the week before in the letter, it said, for the past week, I've had horrible PTSD symptoms. And every night in the past week, I've had my firearm in my mouth wanting to pull the trigger, thinking, how could someone keep living like this? And that book got to her somehow on the day she needed it, with whatever she needed to hear. I don't know what in the 2 chapters helped kick that off, but I'm grateful it's there. because it got to her when she needed it, and it gave her that reason to keep living. She found her reason through those pages somehow, and it inspired her to keep going. And I went, wow, that's the power of the message that the person needs at the moment they need it. And it found its way to her. I didn't do that. I wasn't there. I wasn't part of it, but somehow it got there. And I think that's a blessing, and that's very cool. The other side is a friend who he took the concept of how do I give, how do I serve, how do I help? And he always wanted to network with, what is the guy's name? Who's the guy on TV, the stock guy, like the ding, 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 buy, sell?
Oh.
Mm.
I have no idea. I don't watch TV.
Oh my gosh.
It's the guy, the dude.
The guy.
I could picture his face. One of our viewers might be able to drop it into comments. I can totally picture his face.
Right? He has the setup, the
He's
little
very
red button
animated.
thing. He's very animated. He's always talking about stocks.
No help here.
Kramer.
You got it. That's
Dave
right.
Kramer. No, Jim Kramer. James.
I'm
Jim
I'm
Kramer. We'll call
confirming
him.
for you.
Okay.
Mr. Kramer.
Please confirm.
Jim. Jairek,
Not-
it's Jim Kramer.
Okay, Jim Kramer. There we go. So Jim Kramer, this guy, my friend, really wanted to connect with Jim. And he had just moved to New York City. He was reading Jim's blog. He was totally in the stocks. And he was like, what's the likelihood if I emailed Jim, who's this famous dude on TV, and I'm like, hey, Jim, can I take you to coffee? He's like, that's probably not going to happen. So instead, he took out a journal and he said, I'm going to do this every day for the next 30 days. I'm going to write down 10 ways I believe I could add unique value to Jim's life.
Wow.
And every day, he wrote down 10 ideas of ways he might be able to add unique value to Jim's life. He did it for 30 days, had 300 ways he thought he could add true value to Jim's life. He went through the 300 ways. He circled his top 5. He picked one. And he goes, I'm going to try this one. Just try it. He circled it. It was, I wish Jim Kramer would write these blogs. Like he was an avid reader of Jim's blog. He wrote every blog that was on the thing. And he said, I wish he would write about these 3. Or I'm sorry, like these topics.
Yeah.
Then he went and said, okay, if I sent that to him, that's not real value. That's kind of the surface of value. I wish you would write about this more because I'm a reader. So he said, how could I add more value? So he said, okay, I'm going to do the research. Here's the topic I wish you'd cover. Here's kind of the major research I wish you would fill in and use to prove a point one way or the other, whatever your opinion is. That's better, but well, what would the headlines, what would the titles be? So he went online and figured out how to do SEO heavy friendly titles. Like here's 2 SEO friendly titles for each option, which was cool. And then he added a little more. And so he came up in the end with, here's 10 blogs I wish you'd write. Here's the SEO title to use based on the best SEO word combo. Here's specifically the information and the research to include the back your point one way or the other. I wish you'd write these, and I hope this is helpful. If you ever have time, I'd love to chat. And he emailed it to Jim's team. In 10 minutes, he got a response that said, could we hire you to help us write these?
Oh my gosh.
And he was like, yeah, I'll write these. This is great. Do I get to meet with Jim to hear his opinion that I could write about? And they said,
For
absolutely.
coffee.
Well, they said, absolutely. Come on down to the studio. We're going to hire you. We'll sign the agreement. You'll be part of our team. You'll meet the whole team. You'll sit with Jim and discuss his opinion to make sure that it matches in the drafting of it. He'll approve it, and then we'll go ahead and put it up on the blog.
Jairek, that is so powerful. And when you're explaining that, you can envision that that individual that took the initiative to say, how can I come from contribution to earn a potential relationship, right? That person clearly had an identity to say, I am enough. And now I'm going to get into challenge solution orientation. And I think for any business owner, what I heard you say is, if we all took a practice of saying, I'm going to write 10 ways I can provide value and contribution to those in my network for 30 days. You said unique value. I'm taking notes, Jairek.
Yeah.
How I can provide unique value. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Any industry, any business person, any leader, any individual can gain amazing opportunities and earn relationships in new ways when we think in that abundant mindset. Love
That's
it.
right. And it
Love
didn't
it.
stop there. So he was there writing the blogs. And every day he came to the office, he looked around and says, what's 10 ways I can make this place better? And he kept writing every day, 10 ways I could add massive value to improve everything going on here. And after 30 days, he had 300 ideas. Again, he picked the top one he saw, which was a software that was missing. He goes, ew, they're missing this. It's not here. Now, he didn't go to Jim and say, Jim, you should really create a software. You should fund this. You should do this. He took his own time, his own money, and his own network. He went and made the software. He brought it back to them and says, hey, I have this idea about a software. They're like, oh, yeah, that's cool. And he's like, and I made it. And they're like, really? He's like, yeah, it's right here. It works, totally functional. Do you guys want to check it out? They're like, yeah. And they go, oh my gosh, we definitely need this. And he goes, well, do you want to buy it? Landed up selling it to his team for $10 million.
So see, what's really cool about these stories is I think so, especially in the world of social media and Facebook, and everybody's perfection is shown all the time, right? I think people forget and don't appreciate the grit and the hustle that people have to get where they are, right? They think that it's just handed to them, or like in your situation, you know, and your dad, Tony, right? You just, everybody sees where Tony is and they just are like, oh, well, you know, Tony just was there and Jairek just got there too. But the reality is you look back at the history and how much time and effort, and you said, you know, 30 to 40 years isn't all that long, but really it is when you think about how much effort went into getting to where you are and helping all these people. But I think people forget how much work goes into being successful in whatever that is, right? And whatever's important to them. So I love that story, because most people that might see your friend might be like, oh yeah, I mean, he had it made and he sold it, but they don't understand. He was committing 30 days. He was spending so much time trying to be creative and add value in a very, very specific way. And look at what happened as a result. People lose, I think they lose sight of that all the time.
Totally. And he was very specific. So there's something, one of my friend's dads, my friend Amanda, her dad, who passed away, his name was Chet. He created this idea called a Dream 100. He said it's the fastest way to multiply your business. And I was like, ooh, that's interesting. How's it work? He said, sit down and write a list of the 100 clients that if you were to work with them, it would 10x, 100x, 1000x the size of your business, like that. Meaning if you just got those accounts, boom, it blows the roof off the place. And I went, ooh, okay, Dream 100. And then I went back to my friend James and went, no, if I was going to go after it. So Chet's approach was know your Dream 100 and then be relentless at going after the relationship with them. And he did this with my dad for 13 years. Every month he sent an email, showed up at the office, called, like he was relentless for 13 years before he got the business partnership. And there's more to it. Like, be prepared, do your homework, know what you're talking about, have a flash roll, know how to do all these other tactical things so that the moment you get the window, you deliver. So 13 years of door knocking, prospecting, and going after that deal. He finally got a 15-minute meeting, and he wowed the heck out of them in 15 minutes, which turned into a 4.5-hour meeting, which turned into a business partnership that made both of them millions and millions of dollars over time. And so the grit and the hustle, a 13-year commitment to crack that stone and get into working together in a partnership. But he was prepared for 13 years for the 15 minutes that turned into that deal. Yeah. Now, looking at that, I take that and mix it with what James did and said, well, wait a second. If he would have wrote down 10 ways to add unique and true value every day for 13 years, he would have millions of ideas, most likely, hundreds of thousands. I don't know the math. Don't someone correct me.
Don't quote you.
He would have an insane amount of ideas. Yeah. And over time, he probably would have figured out how to crack the relationship sooner, because he would have shown up and been like, hey, I think you need this. And they'd have been like, oh my God, how'd you do that? And he's like, right, I'd like to chat. And they're like, come on in. I think it would have sped up the 13-year hustle piece he did, because he would have been looking for very unique value to add so early on that it would have quickly sped up the process of it coming together. And so I like taking those two concepts and going, ooh, who are the dream 100 clients I would love to have? If I could just get those clients, man, my business would transform. And then every day, write down 10 unique ways you could add value to those specific clients. And if you keep doing it and you just commit to kind of one at a time and go after one until you get them, and then the next and the next. For most people, most companies, they went down the list. And if you just add 10 of your dream 100 clients, your business like quadruples that fast. And like a big business quadruples. A small business goes to the moon. But that thought, if you just got 10 of them over time, it would rock the business's world in the right way. And then the key is add value. What's the list? Every day, 10 ways I could add unique value, and then actually deliver. So good ideas are easy to come by. Execution is the real thing.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to say like, oh yeah, write down 10 things. It's easy to say, well, here, you should really do this. There, I added value. That's not value. That's potential value. But the truth is, if you execute the value like James did, he actually built the app and then showed it to him. The execution part is what made him the 10 million bucks, not the idea.
Execution is everything. We have a couple more minutes before I know you're at your time. And one of the questions we wanted to ask you, as we are here talking about leadership from the heart, is what do leaders of today need to be focused on to be the very best leaders of tomorrow?
Ooh, great question. I think both mountains. I think leaders of the day need to get themselves quickly assessed and say, okay, if I were to go through my list, do I feel like I am enough? And do I have the personal one? I have a business version of this. So I have a really cool chart that was built by another company that I went and got certified by that allows me to see if a company is filling these in. And so we look at teams, we look at companies, we look at people and say, okay, in your business, have you checked off these stages? Because if you're not, the business is still all about you, and it's probably why it's struggling. If you have checked these off, the business is all about service, and it's probably why it's flourishing. And so we go through a checklist to make sure they've hit all the boxes in their business sense. Once they're hit, the business usually goes. And so what they should focus on first is making sure that those boxes are checked. The broadest version is I have enough, I'm loved enough, I am enough. And if those are checked, now that human can be focused on service. And service becomes, first there's transformation. So there's the inner work. This is the mindset, the values, the mission, the vision, the things people talk about in personal development, but it's recalibrating. Because if you would have asked me at 15 what my mission and vision were, like I wanted to be like P. Diddy. Glad it didn't work out that way for me. I don't know what that would have been like. But if you asked me after Uganda, my mission and vision were very different. If you ask me now, they're incredibly different. It's a service now. At the same time, my dad used to challenge me. He said, I know you love to give, but have you earned the right to give? You could see by my reaction, I didn't like that phrase in life. I earned the right. Everyone can give. You don't earn the right to give. You just give. And he goes, well, buddy, well, the way you grew up was a bit different than the way I grew up. And where I grew up, you didn't just give because there was nothing to give. So leaders of today need to make sure that they've built themselves into a position that they have something to give. Now, something could be their time, but if you have to work 5 jobs, it's hard to share that time. If it could be money, again, if you don't have any, it's hard to share it. It could be caring. Caring can always be shared. I think that's kind of a minimum starting point for people. Just tell them you care. Click the heart button. Click the hands with the heart thing. Like, I care. So there's little things you can do to start off. But then he was right. It's what's the level of abundance you have to get to financially where you can easily and happily help people when they need you. Yes. I remember the first time I was able to write a $25,000 check to a cause I believed in. I was like, there's a car. I mean, I don't know, nowadays cars are kind of expensive right now, but at one point in life, like, that's a car.
Yeah.
I just handed it to someone and high-fived them and said, "You're welcome." That's weird.
Yeah.
Cool, but like, ooh, this is weird. And it's those moments though where he was right, earned the ability to give. I worked so hard. I believe in a for-purpose model. This is something my friend Adam showed me. He came from Bain Consulting and he drew one circle and it had a dollar sign. He says, I operate psychologically as a consultant with Bain, which is one of these heavy finance-focused, profit-first kind of thought processes. On the other side, he says, my real passion is, and he drew a heart in this other circle, and he said, it's giving, caring, serving, helping other people in need. And he said, I think most people think you have to do one or the other.
Yeah.
He said, what I've learned is you take these two circles and you overlap them slightly. And in the middle of the little diagram, he drew a line. He said, that's a for-purpose business. And I went, tell me more. What is for-purpose? He said, a for-purpose business is the business that runs incredibly high profit margins. I was like, okay, that's not special. Go on. And he said, and then he takes that mountain of profit and it reinvests in the people and projects that matter in the world. And I went, now you're talking. Now you're talking. And he says, you learn how to run your business so efficiently so you can make mountains of profit. And then you take your profit and you reinvest in the people and projects that matter and amplify the good necessary and needed in the world right now.
That's
there
awesome.
It was.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It was the overlap.
And it seems like such a simple concept because as you're describing it, I'm visualizing it. I'm like, yeah, that's where it is. And it's if everybody had that approach, oh my gosh, what could be accomplished, right?
Totally. It changes the whole game. And so I looked at it, and over the last 8 years, I've been studying with a business mentor because I didn't speak business. I spoke heart. I spoke nonprofit work. I spoke help people and coaching people and mindset and all this stuff. I didn't speak business. And so I went and found a business guy who's been there, done that for 40 years, buying and selling companies, made hundreds of millions, lost hundreds of millions, all this jazz. And I asked him, can you teach me how to speak business? And he says, the first thing you need to do is learn financial literacy.
Yeah.
And I was like, sprechen de Deutsch? What? Okay, I clearly don't speak this one. And he goes, how are you at math? And I said, well, I used to hide my math homework behind the couch because I hated it. My mom found it one time. It didn't go well. He's like, oh boy. He said, okay, let me show you math. Let me show you business math. And so he started teaching me P&Ls and how to speak the language and how to understand the difference and how to accrual versus cash accounting and budgets and P&Ls and projections and all this junk. And I was like, oh, was not my favorite thing in the world to learn. But he's the first human who in 2 hours summed up what took my wife 2 years to learn in her MBA work.
Wow.
And he made it fun and interesting and entertaining. And I laughed most of the time and thought it was amazing. And I'm like, this dude has magic sauce to teach people something that's normally difficult, hard, and annoying to learn, in my opinion. And so I learned it. And then for the last 8 years, I've been practicing. I worked with him as a mentor and guide. And at one point, I joined a different level group he had, and my business grew 143% over 2 years. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And we were making more profit in a quarter than we used to make in an entire year. I was like, ultra cool. This is amazing. That whole
there's something to this
profit business thing started showing up. I was like, ooh, then I could write the check that I wanted to write and help the people I wanted to help. I'm like, it's working. This is cool. And then I took the tools and said, okay, can I show other people how to do this? So I believe in learn, live, give. Learn it first. So you got to go educate yourself and study and get the tools. Live it. Actually apply it and get real results so you know it works, not in theory, but in practice. And then Amy Porterfield, we were just chatting with, she calls this the 10% rule, which is when you're 10% ahead of someone else, turn around and give it. Share it with them. Show them how to get there too. Bring more people up, because if more people go up, everyone gets better. I think that's one of the coolest things with the company. Y'all are both in the company.
Yeah,
we are.
Perfect.
Yes.
That's one of the cool things with EXP is how people really win is by causing others to win. Yeah. It's it's a collaborative business, not a competitive business. Meaning, when you're working together and you amplify the people on your team, the whole team amplifies. Part of our job at Success Coaching is helping amplify everyone's performance. If we do that, everyone grows. The company grows, the teams grow, you grow, your finances grow, like the whole thing goes. And I was like, ooh, this is me. I get to help. And the more I help, the better everything gets. This is fun. And so to me, it's like, ooh, that collaboration piece of how do we help people gain those skills and tools to magnify their business, to magnify their progress. I've also learned, though, if you magnify someone's business too much without them doing the first mountain work, they will find a way to wreck it.
Yep.
And I went, uh-oh, people call this that financial temperature gauge. It has a lot to do with I am enough, I have enough, I'm loved enough. If those aren't true and aren't checked off properly, they will find a way to royally screw up a good thing.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. I say all the time, and Renee knows this, I always say I'm lifting others as I climb. And your point is it's just so much more rewarding, right? And I know there's different personalities and different temperaments with people, but for me, like that's truly what fills my soul when I can turn around and there's people that are building and I had some impact on it, not because of me, because of the work they're doing, but it's that collaborative effort as well. So, you know, you mentioned success. I know we have a little bit more time, but we're super excited that you're the newly named president of Success. Like, what made you decide to take that? Was it because of what we were just talking about, where, hey, I can really help other people grow and build? And what does that look like for you 3 years, 5 years down the road? With you have lots of great ideas and plans for success, I know. So what does that look like for you?
Totally. It was interesting. It was a direct message on Instagram. Is how they found me, which in the message said, I'm real. You can trust me. It's definitely not a scam. People are asking if you're interested in a big project. I was like, that definitely sounds like a scam.
Wasn't that Courtney?
No, it wasn't Courtney. There was a recruiter who was reaching out on behalf. And then he said, I want to introduce you to someone. And then he introduced me, and her email address. I Googled which company the email address. I'm like, well, that company's real. So, okay, this is better. And then it turned into a conversation. I was like, wow, okay, this was legit. I'm glad I didn't delete that one. Yeah. And so
we are too.
Yeah, that turned out, and it brought us together. And they saw an incredible opportunity with coaching, both internally to support the EXP community and everyone who's over there, and saying, hey, could we have our own internal coaching that supports us and benefits the whole from within? I said, absolutely. And the vision Glenn shared with me is, hey, can we also build this in a way that it can support all those other small businesses and agents and sales reps and great people and moms and dads and people who just want to be better and have a better life? Yep. And so, you know, my 2-cent theory, I'm still working on this phrase, but kind of, how do you have a bigger business and how do you have a better life at the same time? How do we increase both? Because oftentimes people sacrifice their life to have a bigger business, or they take a smaller business but a better life and say that's good too. Rarely do you see people better their life and better in create a bigger business at the same time. I think the model of EXP provides a very, very unique opportunity to do both, where you can both have lifestyle, and as your team builds, it gives you an amazing opportunity to then fund it. So your business actually keeps getting bigger, both by your efforts and your team efforts, and your lifestyle increases dramatically over time with that. And so I looked at that, then I went and did a bunch of research, and I went, what are the stages? Like, are there steps? Are there stages? Is there some type of path that people will naturally go through? And I went and asked tons of people all over the place. Thank you for probably you both, but Elizabeth especially. Thank you for helping people get that survey filled out. We did. It was so helpful because it allowed me to step into people's worlds and understand where they were at and what they wanted and where they were going. And I reverse engineered all of that into kind of 4 stages we saw. And I labeled them. Labels aren't perfect yet, but I'm getting closer. I called the first stage a hero, the hero stage. And the representation is become your own hero in the beginning. Mm-hmm. You know, we read books of, these comic books of heroes saving people and rescuing the men or women in trouble, and Superwoman flying around doing all this stuff. And I'm like, in the beginning, you kind of need to be your own hero when you start in a business. You got to put your cape on, and whether you believe it's going to work or not, you got to believe in that enough to do the work to get that thing off the ground. And you got to be your own hero. A friend told me, you have to participate in your own rescuing. You have to participate in the process. And I went, ooh. And that's the beginning. The beginning is, we can show you what to do, and we can kind of give you an outline. I need your willingness. Another friend taught me, the willing is a verb. It's an action word. I don't mean, okay, fine, I'm willing to try. I mean, no, I'm going to will myself to do what's necessary to get the traction to move this thing. I went, ooh, I like that. That's a good willing. Yes. And so willpower, the ability to will yourself through that stage of business to amplify it enough to have stability. And so we put numbers to that and said, okay, can we move them from the hero stage in a group capacity up until, I called this next one the top producer, because it's more about productivity. It's more about, that's the wrong word because that means something in this industry. It's more about getting someone to really go. Now that you have traction, how do we amplify the speed at which you're moving? So it's really step on the gas, like build the engine, step on the gas at this level. And it's more personal productivity, personal production, where you're driving yourself forward. And I thought, in those numbers that I researched, that'll get someone between $100,000 to $500,000 a take home. And I was like, ooh, that's a great stage. That's a life-changing stage. I mean, when you get to $100,000, it changes your life. When you get to 5, you're like, dang, I'm rich. Like, this is a cool stage. And then I noticed it's possible to go to $1 million plus in take home in real estate, depending on the size of the properties and stuff. And it's really hard to maintain. I mean, you can get there, but to stay there year over year over year over year over year, and the market moving and everything else, like, that's hard. That's exhausting for many. So we said, well, wait a second. If right around 500,000 take home, what if we created a new stage called Top Leader? And Top Leader became team building, because I know that I can do it. So now I'm 10% ahead of people who are about to try to do this. Can I fill my team, and can I go show them what I did to get to 500? And can I get 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 other humans to all start getting the 500? Because if I get the whole squad up to 500, that number times 10 is way bigger than what I could have done times 1.
Right.
Yes. Replicate.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. The focus changes right there. And the focus becomes replicate and multiply. And that's there. And I think if you do that correctly, that'll bump you all the way up, maybe even to around 1 million take home. And that's a real big number. That's, again, one of those milestone numbers that people are like, oh my God, I did it. Usually your identity changes of who you think you are when you become a millionaire. It's that word that, ooh, I'm now one of those. And then from there, when a team and a company and the amount of volume of sales and transactions gets that big, I think at that point it turns into, I called it a true owner. And a true owner, I use basketball as an example. Steph Curry is an amazing player. Steve Kerr would be the coach, but Peter and Joe are the owners. And the owners don't shoot the ball.
Right.
The owners aren't telling the players how to play.
Yeah.
The owners are investing heavily to make sure that this coach has what they need to make sure that the players have what they need to get the job done at the highest level.
Yes.
And they're providing the structure, and they're providing the vision, and they're providing coaching, higher up coaching on helping navigate the unknowns as they do, which is different than building leaders and building the team. And it's different than producing and pushing the numbers. And so we looked at those and we said, okay, can we build a support system that both our coaches can coach people through those levels? And then we're building a learning center in the background that can educate people on the tools and tactics they need at each level.
Yes.
And again, our thought was specifically under EXP, if we do that right, and we can successfully move people from level to level, the whole pie grows significantly.
Everyone having an important part as a team, critically important, and all commonly focused on, as Elizabeth always reminds us, we're lifting others as we climb.
That's right.
I
That's
love
right.
it.
So I always make this joke just to show the importance of the critical pieces. If you took the owner of the Warriors and put him on the court at 80 years old, no offense, it just ain't going to turn out in their favor that game. If you took the player off the court, even though he makes $200 million in his contract, if you put him in the owner position and he has to risk $50 million a game, he's not going to be able to play. He can't. I mean, I would be flipping out if I had 50 million on the line. Like, is everyone in the seat? Did that guy buy popcorn? What about you? Like, I can't focus on the basketball. I need to make sure my multiple's coming through. That's a big risk every game. And vice versa. If you took Steve, he's kind of aged out of the game, but he's also not quite in the position to take the financial risk. Right. And so each person has a critical role. If you remove any of the three pieces, the whole thing collapses and won't perform. Yeah. And so the top producers are critical and necessary. The top leaders are critical and necessary. The true owners are critical and necessary. And so is the hero group. The hero group is the future of this is a bit overstatement. I was going to say the future of the world. The reason I say that, I'll reverse one thing, and I think this is so important. I grew up with a mom that worked her face off on the weekends, but during the week gave me all of what she had to care for me. And I grew up and still to this day believe the most important job any of us, mothers and fathers and humans, have is, taking care of and shaping the future generation. I don't think there's anything else on earth that's more important than that. And so, I was saying that to a friend of mine who's in corporate, and she was like, well, not everyone's going to be a parent. And I said, that's okay. And I said, I hope moms are recognized at the highest level. I hope dads are recognized at the highest level. And those who can't, I hope they still help and have a niece or nephew or a dog or cat or something that they care for beyond themselves. But I think shaping a future generation is one of the most critical things. Yes. I think if we look at that concept in a business sense, the ability to nurture and shape the hero group is shaping the future of this entire company. I think that's the most important group that everyone needs to pitch in and say, how can we help this group? How can we support these people in their journey? Because we're shaping the future of this entire company from this group. And so for them, you're the future. Really. If you're just getting started and you haven't capped and you haven't hit your traction yet, you are the future. The future of the company is depending on you. It's very critical and important for you to get that momentum. And therefore, wrapping them with as much support as humanly possible to get them moving is the shaping of the future.
Future of the company, future of the community, future of all aspects of life. So everything you're saying can be applied in different scenarios. Renee and I could talk to you 4 hours.
I think we're going to have you come back, Jairek.
I'd be happy to.
We just so appreciate you coming on and opening up and sharing with all of us. And we're just so excited to be in partnership with you and get to know you even more. We always have one last question for all of our guests. And this one might trip you up a little bit. All right?
I'm ready.
Get ready. Okay.
What does leadership from the heart mean to you?
I think my form of leadership, my style, the thing, leadership from the heart's already connected to it for me. And so it's my learn it, live it, give it philosophy. I think leaders go first. They find out what needs to be known and they go figure it out and learn it. I think leaders also go first and they don't just figure it out and then tell people about it, but they actually go live it. They do it. They apply what they've just figured out. And then I think leaders do the most important part is they turn around and they share it with people who need it and help them level up. And so I think the process of leadership is an endless and never-ending situation of constant and never-ending improvement, of always searching for what else can we know in this situation, apply what we just figured out, and then share it with others and help them level up.
Perfect
answer. Absolutely.
Perfect answer. Jairek Robbins, thank you so much for joining us on Leadership from the Heart. We appreciate you, your time, your contribution, and oh my goodness, for what you've achieved so far. having a few moments to chat with you. I think the vision of the future is even brighter than we can imagine. So thank you for what you're giving.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, Elizabeth, oh my goodness, it's never enough time, is it?
Never enough time, Jairek. We're excited to connect with you later on too. And anything we can ever do for you, especially as you're building this, you just have to ask, and we're there. So
thank you. I can hear my son now.
Oh, go get your baby.
You.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you for watching, everyone. See you soon.